All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm Raf Diallo alongside James McMahon, and we're getting a double helping of Jim McMahon today, actually, because he was on the podcast on Monday as we reflected on the Friday night Premier Division games. So today we're going to be looking ahead to the Women's National League and also looking back at last night's SSE Airtricity League games. And to do that, we're joined by coach and analyst Lisa Fallon and former UCD and Shamrock Rovers man Paul Corry. Welcome one and all.
How's it going?
Hi, Raf. How are we doing?
All good. I believe it's the most important day, arguably, in the calendar, Jim McMahon, today, Pancake Tuesday.
Yeah, Pancake Tuesday, Shrove Tuesday. I think it's called Pancake Tuesday because back in the day, it was a question of people getting all the goodies together before Lent, before Ash Wednesday, and the 40 days of abstinence and all that. So there'll no doubt be a fair bit of flipping going on around the country today, and there'll probably be some features on pancakes somewhere. But it's Tuesday, it's the 1st of March, and I was just thinking, was there anything of note that might have happened in the footballing world on this day? And I think maybe the likes of, I think Dixie Dean, famous Everton player of Yorn, died on this day back in, I think, in 1980. And but out from that, also as well, for completely irrelevant, 4 years ago on this day, we had the Beast from the East. You remember that? The Beast from the East, the big snow that happened 4 years ago?
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
So that's what happened as well. It led to some cancellations of the domestic football here in Ireland at the time, but it didn't last for too long, and life did get back to normal and afterwards and all that. But look, spring is here. We'll be turning the clocks forward at the end of the month, and hopefully good times, and COVID is gone. If we can get the business in Ukraine, that's another different matter and quite worrying and serious. But look, I don't want to drift off into some other tangent. We have other things to talk about. So,
yeah, there was as I said, there was a full set of SSE Airtricity League Premier Division games last night. And one thing actually what we were talking about yesterday, Jim, was that kind of difficult turnaround between the Friday and the Monday. And I suppose, Lisa, as a coach, how do you generally deal with that? Because this is happening quite early in the season.
Yeah, I think it's one of those aspects where you kind of come straight out of one game into the other. So it's really all about recovery, because and any knocks that you pick up in that game, you know those players are not going to be available. But I think at this stage of the season, it shouldn't be too taxing on the players. You know, they've just come out of fairly tough pre-seasons. They're training. Most of them are training on a full-time basis. So it's really, the second game on the Monday means it's more about you, because you get less time to kind of look at the opposition and stuff like that. So it really is that when you've got those back-to-back games, you really have to focus on yourselves. Not that you wouldn't do that anyway, but the hardest aspect of those back-to-back games is travelling. So if you're travelling on the Friday and you travel again on the Monday, that's the biggest difficulty for most League of Ireland clubs in terms of the time that the players are spending on coaches, because that definitely hinders the recovery for sure.
Yeah, and the Monday night results, just to read them out here: Shamrock Rovers 3, Drogheda 1, Bohemians 1, St. Pat's 0, Dundalk 3, Finn Harps 0, Derry City 0, Sligo Rovers 0, UCD 0, Shelbourne 0. And before we get stuck into Shamrock Rovers, we're just going to listen to Stephen Bradley discussing Jack Byrne, and Paul Corry was at that game, so he has seen a bit of that magic. And if you're online, you'll probably we'll be playing out the goals here as well. You're going to see exactly what he got up to. But let's listen to Stephen Bradley first.
Yeah, you can see with every game or every minute he plays, he's starting to sharpen up in his head, and he'll only get better and stronger. This is probably only his third or fourth competitive game he's played in a year, so he's still getting there. But like you said, when he sees things very, very early.
And scored a cracker as well as making one.
Yeah, fantastic strike. Goes right behind it, and you could see the movement on the ball. Their goalkeeper, to be fair, moved at the last second on him.
And then you took him off. Is that just to kind of look after him for a while?
Yeah, we need to be careful. Like I said, this is probably his third or fourth competitive game in over a year. He had a knock coming into tonight. He got a knock on Derry. So we were thinking about not starting him. We obviously did, and then at 2-0 I felt it was time to get him out.
Yeah, and then you conceded, and then how worried were you?
I just knew we could go a few more levels, a few more gears. To to be fair to Drogheda, they came into the game at that point, scored, and we're in the game for 5 or 10 minutes. But I knew we had a few levels to go, and thankfully we did, and Graham got us the third goal.
And that Derry defeat out of the system now?
Yeah, we were never worried about it. When you watch the game back, the last 20-25 minutes we were in full control of the game. It wasn't as if we were hanging on. We made a mistake and we got punished, but it wasn't a performance that we were worried about. When you look back and analyse it, we were okay. Disappointed to lose the game, but we were okay. We knew we were alright.
Okay, so that was Shamrock Rovers manager Stephen Bradley just discussing Jack Byrne. Great assist for the Sean Gannon goal, and then a brilliant goal on top of it as well, as they went on to beat Drogheda United 3-1. Paul, you were there, as I said, and I mean, the assist, I think, was arguably better than the goal, and the goal itself was magnificent.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Raf. I think, the execution for the first goal just picks up those little pockets of space in between Drogheda's midfield and their back four. And lovely reverse pass. Most fullbacks would probably expect that to go wide out to Sean Gannon. He's just reversed it inside the fullback. And to be fair to Sean Gannon, it was one of his sort of trademark fullback runs, but his touch across the defender was really good, and a super sideful finish into the bottom corner. So, I mean, you hear Stephen Bradley there talking about Jack Byrne and how he's maybe only starting to get into gear now. He's probably not struggling, but he's probably not had as many competitive games as he would have liked over the last 12, 18 months. And you can just see in his play, Raf, there's moments that when he has the ball at his feet, he's able to thread passes through teams, or he's able to find spaces, or he's just able to execute at a different level than everybody else in this league, to be really frank about it. And he was the difference, particularly on the night. I mean, Shamrock Rovers have an abundance of talent, and they no doubt have better players, but just when you really analyse it and you narrow it down to find moments, Jack Byrne was the difference. That pass for Sean Gannon's goal, and then the strike for the second was just sublime. It was probably one of them where you could see he was sort of on it last night, and when he had the ball at his feet, looked really comfortable. And when Andy Lyons fed that ball into him 20, 25 yards out, you just had a feeling of inevitability that it was going to go in. And the clean, he strikes the ball so clean, and it moves so much that it didn't really give Colin McCabe much of a chance. I think on the whole, analysing the game, I think Stephen Bradley will want more from his side. It was important that they bounced back from the Derry defeat, like you mentioned. It was important they got back to winning ways. But I thought there was moments of play in the final third where they could have tidied up and maybe not cough up possession as much, or maybe not force the ball as much. And it feels like between Mandrew, whether it's Dylan Watts or Richie Tell, Jack Byrne, whether it be Aaron Green or Roy Gaffney, they're just looking for that recipe still about how they fit them all in. And I've no doubt that once they do, they'll certainly go up through the gears. But probably a performance last night where they didn't need to get out of second or third gear, because there was just such a difference in quality between the two sides.
And concerns for Drogheda United? I mean, they've had a lot of change in the off-season. Kevin Doherty is in as manager now, obviously Tim Clancy departing, and a number of key players going. And it's been a difficult start. Obviously, they've only played two games, but I suppose there are question marks about where they're going to be at the end of the season. It's expected to be in the lower reaches.
I would imagine so, and your heart would almost go out for them with the amount of change that they had. They had such an amazing season last year, and to lose Tim Clancy and then to lose a number of key personnel that were part of that journey last year must have been really difficult, because I'm sure they would have been looking to use that as their foundation this season. On the basis of last night's performance, I caught snippets of the Shells one as well. You would have to imagine that it's going to be a bit of a slog. The games against Shamrock Rovers are probably not going to be the ones that are going to decide where they end up at the end of the season. You're looking at the likes of Finn Harps, UCD and Drogheda being those three teams that will probably battle it out down the foot of the table. Their home form will be important. It's never an easy place to go, and if they can get a bit of a crowd in behind them, you'd expect that's where they're going to pick up the majority of their points. But on the basis of the first two games that they've had, it does look like it could be a bit of an uphill battle.
Yeah, you mentioned Tim Clancy there. Now, a second defeat in a row for St. Pat's, losing at Bohemians last night by a 1-0 margin. So we're just going to listen to Tim Clancy, who was speaking to Siobhan Madigan, and also to Trevor Crawley, the Bowes assistant manager.
Tim, certainly not the result you came from, and probably not the performance either.
No. We analysed Bowes the game against obviously Dundalk, and they're very good in the transition when they win the ball back. They're very, very dangerous when they commit bodies forward at a quick pace, and we realised that in first half we really caused ourselves the problems by giving it away in bad areas, and spoke about the importance of the first goal in the game, and the goal we conceded is absolutely horrifically bad on our behalf. Straight ball down the middle. It's something that happened against Sligo as well that we're going to have to address massively. Not dealing with balls down the middle of the park, and it's certainly not good enough.
You never really got into the groove yourself, though. Couldn't find your rhythm at all in the middle of the park.
No, we didn't create very much at all, and that's the frustrating thing. So, yeah, a lot to work on now before a massive game on Friday.
You don't get too much time to work on much, 2 games in 3 days, and then you're straight into a big game on Friday again.
Yeah, well, all the games are going to be massive, so again, we can't be sitting there feeling sorry for ourselves. More or less have to bounce back straight away, and we'll be doing a hell of a lot of work now between now and Friday for another huge game.
It's Rovers on Friday. They don't get bigger tests than that, I suppose.
No, but again, we played in the President's Cup. We've seen what Rovers are like the last few seasons. They've been very, very strong. We know that's going to be another very tough game on Friday, but it's something that we're going to have to be prepared for.
Trevor, a nice 3 points for a Monday night.
Yeah, lovely 3 points for a Monday night. Would have been even nicer if we had got 3 on Friday. But I think the performance was better. It was an improved performance. We dug in. We showed some resilience. So yeah, very positive 3 points.
Took it to them from the start and probably should have had another few goals.
Yeah, we had chances. Stephen had a great chance at the back post. It was probably the best chance of the game, I think, in the first half that I can remember. Great, we kept a clean sheet, very, very positive. Kept Pat's a really good Pat side to kind of minimal chances. They had one shot there at Byrne, so I can remember in the second half. First half, I can't remember too much. So that was very positive. Yeah, good defensively, and I think we improved on Friday, attacking wise. Yeah.
And good to get Stephen among the goals early on in the season, because he's the kind of player that will really kick on from it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great for Stephen. He's had a tough time with injury. It took us a long time to get him up and running, get himself up and running. So it's really nice for him to score the winning goal for us tonight. It's a reward for all the work he does, or he has done, off the pitch.
And after missing out the first week's action, to get 4 points in 3 days, it really gives you a fill up now going on that long trip again to Harps this weekend.
Yeah, it's a great 3 points, and it's a lovely 3 points, but that's the thing. Friday now we've another chance for another 3, so we've got to get after that. It'll be, come Friday night, we need to have this feeling that we've taken 3 points. That's what you want to do.
All right, that was Bowes assistant manager Trevor Crawley, and before that St. Pat's manager Tim Clancy. I suppose on Pat's first, Paul, obviously, they were coming off the back of a bad defeat to Sligo Rovers on the Friday, and one would imagine, given the strength in their squad, as much changed as it is, that they would bounce back to some degree. But already very early on, Tim Clancy finds himself under pressure, and especially with a big game against Shamrock Rovers to come.
Yeah, that is going to be a massive game. I think what Tim will take confidence in is the President's Cup final against Shamrock Rovers. I thought they were really impressive when they played out in Tala that night, and he'll be looking for more of the same from that performance and also the Shelbourne performance in the opening game. The concern I would have about Pats is, and Tim kind of touched on it there in his post-match interview, is just the back four. I thought it was a really, really sloppy goal last night to concede. Scott really needs to go and address the ball. He lets it hop once or twice, and Stephen Mallon takes advantage of it. And what you can't have, Raf, is you can't have, particularly the way Pats plays, is try to be really progressive and create chances and then get done by one long ball. It kills all momentum, and it kills all sort of confidence you have from building up play when you know that potentially you're going to be coughing up chances. Paddy Barrett is to come back into that back four, and he will be pivotal to that, given the fact that they've lost Lee Desmond out of that defensive unit. So that is certainly one area that you would look for St. Pat's to tidy up on. But like I mentioned, in the President's Cup final in particular, I thought they were really impressive, and against Shells. And if they can get Owen Doyle firing, if they can get Dara Burns off one side coming in and contributing to goals and chances in that final third, you would expect that they will pick up. It is a bit of a transition period with Clancy going in there. It's going to take a bit of time for things to gel and for things to stick. But you would like to see them just start to put a few more points on the board, because even if they got out of Dalymount last night with a point, you start off from your first 3 games with 4 points. You take a bit of confidence. What you don't want to do is to get into a habit of losing games. And that would be the concern from St. Pat's, that maybe they just look a bit of a soft touch at the back at this moment in time. And maybe that's something that needs to be addressed.
And Lisa, that kind of defensive work that needs to be done on the training ground, obviously there was a very quick turnaround, as we were saying, between the Friday and Monday. They have a few more days before they face Shamrock Rovers. Like, how quickly can issues like that be fixed?
They have to be fixed quickly. That's the nature of it, and that's the pressure that's on the top teams. and players who are playing in those teams, you know, there is pressure, and that's why there is, because of the expectations that are on you. So, and look, the thing about, and I'm always hesitant at this start of the season to, you know, overanalyze or over-criticize teams, because it does take a little bit of time for teams to gel, and particularly when you have games Friday, game Monday, you often see a little bit of rotation in the team. Like there's some players that are missing, and it does take time, and it's a funny one with the League of Ireland, because each team and every club has so much change every off season. And it really, like, you know, I know myself from working at Cork City and at Galway, like it's a new team every year. And then if you have a managerial change as well, it takes time to embed your philosophy, because like pre-season games are all well and good, but once you go into the heat of battle in a competitive game, it's a completely different animal. The pace of the game, the tempo, the crowds, the expectations, you know, it's just a different animal. But it does take a few games. I think it takes 5, 6, even 7 games for a team to find their rhythm. And only then do you know where you're going to be. In the early stages of the season, you just need to pick up as many points as you can, but there will be, I'm sure Tim will have little things that he'll look to work on, and you know, yes, you get that time on the training ground, and look, to be fair, today the day after the game is always going to be a recovery day. You're not getting much done there. If anything, you may be looking back on performances, maybe a bit of video, but the majority of it is recovery. But which means then you've probably only got one more session on the pitch Thursday if the players are getting Wednesday as a day off. So, you know, you do not get a huge amount of time to work on these things, particularly when you've got the midweek game. But like I said, I would be reluctant to overanalyze things at this stage. It's only 3 games in, 2 games in for some of the teams. So it does take a little bit of time for teams to settle and just find that rhythm.
Can you ever see the day that maybe in this league that there will not be such upheaval in squads, I think, between the end of a season and the start of the next season? Like it's almost as if every team, maybe with the exception of Shamrock Rovers, who I think only brought in 2, well, obviously Jack came back, that it's almost starting from scratch every year. I mean,
yeah, and that's a difficulty. It's a massive difficulty. But again, it comes back to the off the pitch stuff. Until that side of the house is in order and we're able to give players proper contracts, and there's, you know, enough stability and, you know, in the clubs and their run as proper business models. And this isn't just down to managers. Like, I mean, this is down to people who are running clubs. The onus is on them to make sure that you can give players a little bit of longevity. And, you know, I know up in Derry, obviously there's great investment now, and you know, they're talking about 4-year contracts up there. Like, that's where we need to be. And, you know, a 1-year contract here and there is, you know, there's no stability in that. And you can't, it's very difficult to build a team that, because really in year 1, it's not really your team. In year 2, it's becoming your team. Realistically, year 3 is your year.
I mean,
that's with sustaining players and keeping the spine and adding the layers and those little bits. So it does take time, and that's what makes it more difficult in the League of Ireland for teams to have sustained success. And that's why I think it's no coincidence that Shamrock Rovers have won back-to-back and will be favourites for this one, because of the stability and because of the strength and depth in the squad that they have, and the consistency that's there, both off the pitch in terms of the managerial setup, but on the pitch in terms of the squad and the depth. And Stephen this year has just cherry-picked what he needs to add to make them better. You're not losing players and going, well, we just need to try and be as good as we were last year. You know, Stephen has that luxury of being able to cherry-pick to make them better. And he's the only manager in the league this season, I think, that's been really able to do that. Maybe with the exception of Sligo to an extent, and Derry.
Yeah, like Sligo, I think they brought in 3 or 4 players, Derry likewise again. But it's almost, as a supporter, you feel like every season you have the legs cut from under you, because I'm coming to the first game of the season. And
just me as a coach, you do as well.
I know, like, I mean, like, I'm sure for you as well, you know, so.
Yeah. I think on that as well, James, like, don't get me wrong, all the clubs want to be able to hand out 3 and 4 year contracts, like Lisa's saying. She's spot on. if you're not including them in your squad moving forward, and your best players always get cherry picked to move to the next level, at least if you have them tied down to 3 or 4 year deals, you're able to command better fees when it comes to, a transfer negotiation or whatever that might be. And then those extra funds you're able to reinvest into the squad. So Lisa's spot on. It's of course difficult to get to that situation, but when you do, it just enables clubs as organizations just to plan so much more strategically.
Yeah, Jim, you were over at Dalymount on Friday, so they started off with a draw, and now they've added a victory in a Dublin derby against Pats on top of it. So it's a relatively good start given all the upheaval, and we're talking about upheaval here in general in the league. But Bows had a lot of it since the cup final. And again, I guess the word revenge and everything, given who they were playing against, will probably come up.
Yeah.
But it's kind of irrelevant because very few players from that final were actually on the pitch last night.
That's right, yeah. And those that were on the pitch from that final, the likes of Coote and, played quite well. But for Bows, I was a bit worried about them on Friday night because I thought for the last half an hour against Dundalk, it was Dundalk who were setting the tempo. It was Dundalk who were spraying the ball around in midfield. It was Dundalk who were physically stronger and more imposing in that crucial last half an hour. But I didn't see last night's game, but by all accounts, it was. Pats kind of faded away late on, and it was Bows who finished strong. And they have 4 points out of 6, and they head to Finn Harps on this weekend coming. So, they'd be quite confident of adding to that tally.
Yeah, and very quickly on Dundalk, who were playing Bows on Friday. Obviously, they beat Finn Harps 3-0. Not the perfect performance, but Stephen Bradley, and not that Stephen Bradley. This is the one with the V that's come from Scotland on loan from Hibs. This is 4 goals in 3 games. He's a great addition to them, clearly.
Yeah, and you can just look at the way he's taken some of his goals, Raf, as well. You can tell that he's got a real sort of knack when he's in that final third and composure in front of goal, that he knows how to score. I spoke to 1 or 2 of the lads who I'd still know within the league who are actually playing up in Dundalk at this moment in time, and they earmarked him as somebody to look out for early on, even before the season had kicked off. So he's obviously shown things in training, and he's shown things in the first 3 games that he's got a decent level to him. And it's a bit of a lottery sometimes when you take players from outside the league that aren't, I guess, really accustomed to our clubs and to our grounds and how, I guess, the style of football differs maybe to what it is they're used to. But this is somebody who's clearly hit the ground running, and somebody that Stevie O'Donnell will be certainly leaning towards to contribute as much as he has, or to continue to contribute goals moving forward. But even if you take the goals away, just little clips and his control of the ball and the way he manipulates the ball, he certainly looks as somebody who we can look out for over the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, and Lisa, you were watching Derry City and Sligo Rovers, and there would have been expectation about this game given the fact that both had good wins on the Friday, and then it ends up, I suppose it's the way life goes generally, you build something up and then it always ends up disappointing. So it ended up being a 0-0 last night. But in terms of positives or negatives that either side can take, what did you notice?
Yeah, well, I think I was kind of on the fence because I made the decision last night. I wanted to watch on the LOI TV. So when I saw the team sheets and I saw that Patrick McElhenney was starting, that kind of was the hook. And obviously with the 2 of them getting such big wins on Friday night, yeah, a massive crowd in the Brandywell again. But it was a little subdued. I don't know if it's the Monday night or if it was just so cold or whatever, but the atmosphere just seemed a little bit flat. But again, just watching Brandon Cavan and Will Patching and McElhenney, some of the combination play is just so nice to watch, and they bring quite a lot of creativity, and they're a dynamic team, and I think, they've more players to come back in. So I think, and Derry, like I've said it before, Derry always used to be a really, really hard place to go. And then there was a bit of I don't like to say a softness, but you could go to the Brandywell and get points and expect to get points up there. And I think it's going to change. That's going to really change this year. I think there's a bit more steel about them. There's a bit more quality, a bit more depth. But again, I think they're another team that have a lot of really good players. I think Rory has great ideas. I like his philosophy. You know, they want to move the ball quickly. They try to restart the game quickly. They try to keep the tempo really high. And they look to play out from the back and build through the third. So I think Derry are going to be a nice team to watch. But again, I think they're a team that are going to take a few games to find their rhythm and just to get the flow, because they have players to integrate into the team. But from a Sligo perspective, you know, I thought Sligo were decent. They were, you know, they started the game on fire. Then Derry kind of just absorbed the pressure, and then Derry got a foothold in the game. But to be fair to Sligo, they had a massive chance to score. David Cawley had a cracking chance smashed it off the crossbar. But I think a worry for Sligo will be that Greg Bulger went off injured. I think that could be a problem for them, because Greg is such a big player for them. Niall Moorhan came on in his place, but and actually, do you know what? Another player that really impressed me last night was Owen Toll. I was so impressed with him, even from a centre back position. The amount of times he was up in the box. You know, he was getting on the ball. He was out wide at times, crossing the ball in. So he's obviously been given a license to get forward and add to the attack. And there was something quite nice about the way Derry are trying to play. And again, I think there's a toughness and a steeliness about them that hasn't necessarily been there before. And again, another massive crowd in the Brandywell. I've got high expectations for Derry this year, I'll be honest.
Yeah, sorry, Lisa, do you think they're obviously second favourites? Would that be a tag, you know, in terms of they're the team behind Shamrock Rovers? I know it's only 3 games in.
I think Rory Higgins wouldn't thank me for it, but I think yes. I think based on the quality they have in the squad and the depth, I think Rory will absolutely talk it down this year. But I was very impressed with them on Friday night again, and it was a different type of game last night. They'd be disappointed not to score and not to win that game. But yeah, I think, you know, over the course of the season, as they gel, I think they're going to become a serious animal in this league.
Yeah, I also thought as well, before he went off, Greg Bulger, I thought had a great game for Sligo, and he will be a big loss for Sligo. And
Greg doesn't go off in games.
No.
You know, we had him down at Cork, and you know, Greg is a tough nut. Takes a lot for Greg to go off in a game. So I hopefully from Sligo's perspective, there's not much in that, and it was more precautionary, that he had a knock and they just took him off. It actually just looked like he couldn't continue.
Yeah, which is, and also as well, I think the Sligo keeper McGinty, he's been showing good form for the last couple of years, and that seems to be continuing now into this season. And he put in a decent shift last night.
Yeah, he did. He was good. Like, he commands his box and he's brave. And you know, sometimes some of his decisions, I worry, has he been too brave? But no, he's good. And I think he again, another young keeper. He's going to grow and grow and grow. And obviously had Murphy in for Derry. And I think it's going to be a big season for him this year, because at Bray, obviously, he garnered a huge amount of respect for his shot stopping, which is, I remember he frustrated us a couple of times when I was there with Galway last year, you know, worldy of a game. But I think the way Derry play will ask more questions of him in terms of his distribution. And I think that's an element of his game that he needs to develop. And I think teams who press high will sniff around that and will test him. So I think for him, that's going to be his biggest challenge, and his development opportunity this year is based on the way Derry are playing and building from the back, that he's going to have to be able to absorb and take passes back under pressure. So a bit of growth for him. And again, I think it's still taking him a little bit of time maybe to gel with the way they're trying to play. I think I've high expectations for Derry this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
No pressure. No pressure.
And I don't know if it was pressure issues in the Shelbourne or the UCD-Shelbourne game, but the sprinkler system malfunctioning later on in the game, and also a bit of a dampener in terms of results. And yeah, that is a pun, and I apologise. But also another 0-0. We might just listen quickly to Damien Duff, who was reacting to it, because they've had a few ups and downs since the season began.
The positives, definitely, but after that, I'm not sure what else there was tonight. Listen, great picking up a point, but just the performance, that's the bit that's got me. Started off really well, 10, 12, 15 minutes. I thought, right, yeah, we're on it, here we go. And don't know whether just a lack of patience, calm came into the game then, and we just never got it back.
Do you think a lot of that's down to the fact you've played 3 games in just a little over a week?
I don't think so, no. I think they're really fit guys. I said to them after there, I refused to even ask you whether you were tired. We're big as a team and as a club, just playing simple football, and everything tonight was just confused. They took the simplicity out of their game. That's why they've done well throughout pre-season and started off well in the season, and I said that was lost tonight.
Another few days to sort it out before Derry, and a big test at home.
Yeah, listen, we can't wait. Obviously back at Talca Park, one of the supposed contenders for the league. So yeah, listen, really looking forward to it. But I said tonight we're all going disappointed home, and again, not as much because of the point or 3 or lack of 3 points, because I know it's hard to win games in this league. It's just the manner of the performance.
All right, that was Shelbourne manager Damien Duff speaking to LOI TV after that 0-0 draw against UCD last night. Paul, a bit of a missed opportunity for them, especially after getting that first win of the season on Friday.
Yeah, 100%, Raf, and I think Damien would have wanted to build a bit of momentum with back-to-back wins. You could hear in his interview there, he will take the positives in the sense that is now another clean sheet off the back of the Drogheda game, which gives them a good foundation going forward. Particularly, there would have been a couple of question marks after getting beaten 3-0 on the opening day of the season. But you can hear in his voice there, he's frustrated, more so with the performance, that it didn't really seem to go to plan. You can hear that he wants to play a simple game. He wants to play through the thirds. Simple is good, but simple isn't always easy. Was something that somebody said to me before, and it's a really good point. So, he's going to want his team to be progressive. I worked with Damien at Shamrock Rovers. He wants high intensity. He wants to move through the thirds. He wants movement. He wants his team to be dynamic. And, sometimes when you go to the bowl, it's such a big pitch. It can lack atmosphere. Maybe that kind of found its way into their performance, and maybe they just couldn't really click into gear. And it's a bit disappointing, but I think off the back of the Pats result in the first week of the season, he probably would have taken 4 points from the next 2 games, and that certainly gives some confidence to build upon. And like Lisa mentioned, with a number of clubs in our league, there's a hell of a lot of change at Shelbourne this year, both in personnel and in management. So it's going to take a while before they really click into gear. So yeah, maybe a bit of a missed opportunity, but I don't think you'd be all too disappointed with how the start has gone off the back of the first week.
And Lisa, just UCD and Finn Harps very quickly before we move on to previewing the Women's National League. Again, it's the expectation for both clubs was it was going to be a difficult season and they're going to be battling near the bottom. Those concerns obviously haven't really gone away.
No, and they won't. I think the bottom of the table will be as tough as the top of the table this year. And I think, Finn Harps, we know, are such an experienced team at being able to just ride out the storm and find a way. And Ollie's so streetwise and he's shrewd. There'll be games that they won't win, but he'll know the games they have to win. And Ollie, the thing about trying to survive is that sometimes you have to focus on getting the points that you can get and putting more of a focus on them. And then obviously anything in certain games you'll go into that they will be a bonus. I think Ollie will be disappointed with that performance last night. And again, but Dundalk is and always is a difficult place to go. But I think Paul's made a really good point there about UCD this season. And, there won't necessarily be big crowds there. And teams, we can see the crowds like, in Dalymount last night, up in the Brandywell, in Rovers, in Pats, like all the grounds are they're packed this year, and it's brilliant to see. And that's going to be a challenge, because I know last year when we were playing in front of no crowds, and then when we got the crowds back in at the end of the season, the difference it made in terms of performance levels. Now, number one, it can inhibit players a little with the crowds that are there and the pressure, but I think players feed off. You feed off the crowd, you feed off the energy. Every ball that's coming in, you get a gush from the crowd and a little signal as to, there's danger or there's an opportunity. And that's a huge part of the game. And I think, over the years with Cork City, when we went to Belfield, and even with Galway last year, one of the things you have to prepare for going to Belfield is that you don't allow the lack of atmosphere to suck the life out of the tempo of your game. You really have to take ownership of maintaining the tempo and the momentum of your game. And that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, of playing in a ground where there's no fans or there's a small crowd. And that is something that will play massively in UCD's favour. And that's what I said earlier, you know, when you talk about teams, you know, taking your eye off the ball or going into a game expecting, oh, we should win this one. You can't do that with any team, because every team, you know, Finn Harps, UCD, Drogheda, you know, and Shells, if you know, if they end up in that. But every team has its nuances and has its difficulties and its challenges. Like Ballybuffet is a hard place to go regardless, and you know, no team enjoys going there because of how difficult Finn Harps are to play up there. So yeah, I think the teams we probably expected to be thereabouts and in the battle will be there, yeah, you know, it's at this stage, it's just every point matters, because come the end of the season, every point you have will be so important.
So you mentioned every point making a difference. I think that was definitely the case for last season's Women's National League, the way it ended, that very dramatic ending with Shelbourne winning the title on the final day with a turnaround I don't think anybody expected, and Peamount United kind of losing out. Obviously, this season's a 10-team season's kicking off this weekend with Sligo Rovers, the new team. But I suppose to start at the very top, Shelbourne have lost a couple of players, which is probably going to be a bit of a blow. Peamount, for all that happened at the end of the season, their goal difference was markedly better than everybody else. So does it look like it's going to be Peamount maybe getting revenge this season, especially with the added motivation of trying to make up for the way things ended last time out?
Yeah, for sure. I think Shells and Peamount will still be there or thereabouts. I think, yeah, like you said, Shells have lost a couple of players. Saoirse Noonan's gone over to Durham. You know, and it's a problem for the Women's National League. Every player that looks good ends up going across the pond. So, you know, I think even from a Women's National League point, you know, we have to start thinking about contracts for players and, you know, being able to hold on to the players, or at least get something for the development of these players. And that's going to be a huge, and I think a very immediate challenge for the FAI in terms of how they deal with that issue. But yes, I think you can't see beyond Shelbourne and Peamount, but I honestly think Wexford will be there or thereabouts.
Yeah, I was going to bring them up, because obviously they won the cup and
they
weren't that far away. Yeah, they weren't that far away. Yeah.
They were brilliant in the cup final, and I tell you, there's a bit about Wexford. There's a lovely bite and personality in that team, and they've got big personalities in terms of the players, but as a team they have a personality, and I love that about Wexford. And you know, I think we probably see a big year for Ellen Malloy this year. I mean, she's just exquisite to watch. But, you know, the better she gets, again, it comes back to how long will she be here. But yeah, no, I think Wexford will definitely have a say in it this year, and more of a say than they had in it last year. And I think Shells and Peamount, you can't really, you know, they're always going to be there or thereabouts. But I think it'll be a tougher battle. And I would also think, you know, I think Galway have recruited well. I think there's like Galway. You know, Galway were the ones that stirred the pot on the last day of the season. You know, they had this unbelievable performance and completely caught Peamount by surprise. So I think Galway are a growing entity, and I think this could be a big year for them as well. I think Bows have recruited quite well as well. They've brought in the likes of Katie Burdis, Sinead Taylor is signed from Wexford Youths. You know, Sinead is a serious player, and she can score goals. So I think she's going to be a big signing for Bows this year. And then obviously Sligo will be a bit of an unknown entity. You know, like the likes of Emma Hansbury in there, Emma Doherty, who's an Ireland under-19 international. You know, I think Kristen Semple is in. She's joined from Cork City. So I think this year could be probably a difficult year for Athlone and maybe Cork City. Treaty, interesting to see how they are this year, you know.
Well, Well, they have a new manager as well, don't they, in Donna Reardon?
That's what I'm saying. Like, so, you know, some of the teams are like, and Galway have had a change of manager as well. And, you know, so I think there, again, it's the same problem for the Women's National League that you have in the League of Ireland, is the turnover. But Shelbourne and Peamount and Wexford Youths have that bit of stability and that bit of consistency that the other teams certainly won't and don't have. Although, to be fair to DLR Waves, they're another team that's growing, and they had a you know, pretty strong finish to last season. So I think DLR Waves could have a little bit of, I think they'll have a say in where it goes at the end, but it won't be, I don't think they'll be contenders, but I think the points that they take from teams could have an impact on the end of the season. But yeah, listen, I think there'll be high expectations on the league again to kick on this year. I think it's absolutely fantastic to see that Sligo Rovers have a team. I think, you know, and I think you can't be considered a top club in this country if you do not have a women's team in the Women's National League. But I think we have to be serious. I think if we are serious about football in this country, every top League of Ireland club must have a senior women's team. And we have to start to look at even making it semi-professional at the start and using that as the foothold. But, you know, the men's and women's club teams should be a singular entity within the each club, and not, oh, they're part of us, but they're not really. You know, we have to get away from that. But I think because the teams that do it and bring them together will reap the rewards, and the investments and the commitment to infrastructure and development that you put in now is going to, you know, have a massive impact. And, you know, the way the Champions League, the Women's Champions League is growing, and prize money and stuff like that, these things are going to start to make a big difference. So the team that qualifies for the Champions League and gets into those games are going to have a serious financial advantage. So, and there's a big opportunity for clubs, I think, to take women's football seriously.
And just on your point on the Champions League, because it's something Vera Pauw was talking about recently in regard to, there isn't like we're talking about having a second tier in the domestic league here, but there isn't really a second tier fallback option like there is the Europa League in men's football. And she was making the point that, you know, whether it's a Peamount or Shelbourne, you know, if they get that, like whatever it is, 400,000 prize money, it opens up a massive gap between teams. And is that something else you kind of feel needs to be addressed?
It does. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I think teams need to take that seriously, because the opportunity is there. But on the other side of it, I think, you know, teams that are not affiliated to League of Ireland clubs could ultimately struggle. Because I think if League of Ireland clubs are women's teams that are associated with League of Ireland clubs and you know, connected, if they get the Champions League places, it's going to be harder for teams that are not, or don't have a partnership or a relationship to maintain their status in the game. So the pressure on the likes of Peamount will become tougher to maintain that champion. And to be fair to Peamount, they have been incredible in terms of leading the lights for women's football in this country. You know, the women's teams and the girls' teams always, you know, you were never a second-rate citizen at that club. Their facilities are incredible. And great testament to them. When women's football wasn't sexy in this country, Peamount were doing it, and they were doing it really, really well. And also they are the first Irish club to qualify for the group stages in European football. So, you know, I think Peamount will be aware of that growing pressure and that challenge to compete with League of Ireland clubs as the women's game develops. But yeah, I think, look, Peamount, Wexford and Shells, I think the winner of the league this year will come from those three.
Yeah, and in fact, I think statistically Wexford actually had more players in the team of the year at the end compared to Peamount and Shells combined, which was actually remarkable that they're finishing third, and the other two are kind of ahead. But it's Wexford that kind of have the individual dominance. But Jim, very quickly, you always have your ear to the ground in Sligo, I'm sure. What's the general mood there, and I suppose the sense of excitement with a new team coming in?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a definite sense of excitement. I think the mood, Raf, would be one of, it could be difficult for them going, you know, in this first year. And they certainly have a difficult start next Saturday. But they've, I think they only named their manager, Steve Feeney, last December. I think he was appointed on the 15th of December. He played for Sligo Rovers. He worked under Paul Cook when Cookie was manager there at the start of the last decade. And they've signed a few players from Donegal, and there's a few players from Donegal, and there's a player, Kristen Sample. She's from the States. I think she was with Cork last season. I think there's a sense of excitement up in Sligo anyways, because obviously the men's team have, they're playing in Europe this year, and there's plans ahead in 2028 for a new stadium. And as Lisa pointed out, I think that's this other point in the block is having a senior women's team competing in the league in this country as well. So the sense that I'm getting from it's great, but this season ahead could be tough for Sligo.
Yeah, but it's definitely going to be an exciting season anyway at both ends of the table anyway, especially with, as Lisa said, Peamount Shells and Wexford probably joining the party as well. Now, Lisa, you were on co-commentary on Sunday for the Women's FA Cup game, and I'm laughing because I know exactly what's coming up here. So that was Arsenal beating Liverpool 4-0. But to be honest, the only thing we were talking about afterwards, and if you're on Twitter, you've probably seen the goal at some point, but Katie McCabe, Ireland's captain, fantastic, scoring an incredible goal. I mean, and this one to yourself, Lisa, and to Paul, I mean, the technique, it's unbelievable. It's a Paul Scholes-esque.
Yeah, I think, watching it, I actually said on the day, I think we should make sure that we never, ever take her for granted, how good she is, because that strike, and I mean, you see other goals she scored this season, she seriously could have a goal of the season contender list on her own, with some of the strikes she's had. But the technique, just to hit it with the power, the speed, the accuracy from the range, it's a volley. It was just sublime, and just she saw it all the way. And the minute it hit her foot, you knew it was going in. And it was, it's and I said it, I think at the time, any player, male or female, that's a serious technique to have in your locker. And she just has it, and she has the vision and the capacity to execute it. It was a beautiful goal, and we were probably spoiled because a couple of minutes later, Caitlin Ford scored one herself. That wasn't too bad, She just left it, opened up the space, and she hits one herself from a fairly similar range. And really, those two goals were probably the genuine difference between the two teams in the first half. There's just that bit of quality. But yeah, no, it was great to see the Irish girls in that game, and obviously, just the standards that we can aspire to in this country. The women's game here, like I said, is growing. I know the clubs are making massive strides, and it's a pillar in the FAI's strategy, which is so important. But we need that follow through. We need to see your teams playing in the top tiers of women's football. So if not the top tier, then certainly the second tier when it comes into place. But that has to be the aspiration, and that has to be the challenge. But it was a good game. 4-0 was probably a little harsh on Liverpool. 3-0 certainly was a half time. It was just quality. But it was great to see Leanne Kiernan as well flying now. She's having an unbelievable season.
Yeah, she's been very, very prolific. Yeah,
she has, and she struggled so much with injury when she was at West Ham. And to be fair to Matt Beard, when he moved from West Ham, he went to Bristol as the interim manager, and then when he went to Liverpool, he took Leanne Kiernan up with him, and to be fair to her, she's got her fitness up. You can see her strength and her power is developing, and Liverpool are reaping the rewards for it, and she had like I said, an unbelievable chance to level the game at 1-1. A 1v1 with a goalkeeper, and it just drifted a little wide. It just drifted wide for her. But yeah, and to have her back is a great option for Vera Pauw as well, with the games that the women's team have coming up later on this year.
And Paul, also involved in Liverpool. Myself and Jim were chatting about it yesterday, but Queeveen Keller, of course, which is now the Queeveen Cup final. I think we have to describe it as now. I didn't know beforehand that you were a Chelsea fan, so I'll have to apologise for that first. But Queeveen's performance, obviously, we're going to be selfish and just look at it from the Irish point of view. I suppose it's the narrative you kind of want, because obviously it goes to penalties and it works out so perfectly that nobody decides they're going to save a penalty. So it's up to Queeveen then and Kepa to decide things. Unfortunately, from an Irish perspective, it's the Cork man that won.
There were so many elements to his performance, Raf, that were just mildly impressive. I think when you analyse the 120 minutes and the way the game worked out, his shot stopping was superb. Some of the point blank stops that he made, I think back to the Christian Pulisic chance, particularly in the first 10, 15 minutes. The reactions were so quick to get his hands up into the right areas to actually prevent the shot from going in. And then just his all-round commanding of his penalty area, you can see that Van Dijk and Matip are so comfortable with him and they trust him. And, Lisa was speaking earlier about Brian Maher up in Derry and being asked to play out with his feet. Well, Liverpool is absolutely that case as well. And he's asked to clip balls into fullbacks. He's asked to play out through centre halves. He has to deal with a lot of pressure from opposition, and he just deals with it so gracefully. He never looks as if he's flustered, and you can just tell by his facial expressions and his body language that he just looks like somebody who's in complete control of his game, has complete confidence in himself. And there was one piece as well that I really liked. It was almost like a diagonal ball, and he's come out of his 6-yard box to collect it. And sometimes you don't see that with keepers. They can be a bit tentative when it comes to coming out, but his overall presence around the penalty area was superb. And then to cap it all off, the strike for the penalty was so plush and so clean. I was delighted for him. I really, really was, because being a number 2 goalkeeper can't be easy. You have to spend 99% of your time looking in and biding your time and waiting for your chance. And the one thing that you say about Queeveen Kelleher, whether it's been in the Champions League or in the League Cup, particularly over the last 12, 24 months, his performance has been superb. And that's reflecting what Klopp says about him. He came out and said he's the best number 2 in the world. And at this moment in time, it's hard to argue with that point, but just the character of the man, the way he goes about his business, he's so understated. It's hard not to like Queeveen Kelleher, and I think everybody in Ireland was delighted for him on the weekend how it worked out.
Yeah, and also I suppose we've been talking that long that the sunlight, now this is only for people who are actually going to be watching this podcast, the sunlight has gone from hiding away in a corner to me it's kind of landing on my face the whole time, and I'm moving around on camera to get out of the way, so which is probably a good time to wrap it before it actually gets into my eyes and potentially causes me possible damage. So before we do that though, the fixtures this weekend, there is Shelbourne versus Bohemians in the Women's National League. That's at 2:00. Also at 2:00, DLR Waves versus Treaty United. And then 3 5:00 kickoffs, Athlone Town versus Wexford Youths, Peamount United versus Sligo Rovers, and Cork City versus Galway. So that's all on Saturday to look forward to. And in the SSE Airtricity League Premier Division, it's St. Patrick's Athletic versus Shamrock Rovers on the Friday, Drogheda United versus UCD, Shelbourne versus Derry City, Finn Harps versus Bohemians, and then on Saturday, Sligo Rovers versus Dundalk. And in the First Division, also on the Friday, Cove Ramblers versus Treaty United, Galway United versus Waterford, Wexford versus Athlone, and on Saturday we finally get to see Longford Town when they take on Cork City. So I think Jim and Lisa and Paul, that pretty much brings us to an end.
Yeah, thanks, Raf. Just quickly, Raf, I see the draw has been made for the Women's FA Cup quarterfinals. It's just been made this morning. Just go through Chelsea against Birmingham City, Arsenal against Coventry United, Manchester City against Everton, Ipswich against West Ham. So that was just made there this morning. So that's one to look forward to, of course. But anyway, everyone, thanks a million for taking the time to come on, and we'll be back with next week's soccer podcast next Monday. So Paul, Lisa, Jim, thanks a million. Thanks, Raf.
See you later.